In Pokémon X and Y, at the beginning of the post-game, we met an interesting character named Emma. With Emma reappearing in Pokémon Legends ZA, I think now is a great moment to ask, was there more to Emma than we were told? My theory is that Emma is in fact a FALLER. Let's look at the evidence that this might be true. This video will contain spoilers for many Pokemon games, especially including X and Y, Sun and Moon, and the trailers released so far for Legends ZA. In lieu of a sponsor for this video, please listen to my music on my Bandcamp page. My first album, I Had to Go Away for a While, is packed with Pokemon references for you to find, and so is my most recent EP, On the Shoulders of the Ghost. Our upcoming second album, Ice Type, promises even more references, so follow us there to support my art. Link in the description below. Thank you! We are first introduced to Emma early in the post-game of X and Y. The international police agent Looker contacts us to request our assistance in a case he's working on. Looker tells us that he's acting as a private investigator on hire for a job, enlisted by concerned mothers of Lumiose, whose children are becoming involved with gang activity. Looker then calls upon us, the new champion of Kalos, to assist him, since he is now without any Pokemon of his own. We go down into the alleys of Lumiose and find a bunch of children lined up for battle, Nugget Bridge style. At the end of the gauntlet, we find Emma. Emma is a 16-year-old girl, homeless and living on the streets, with her partner Pokemon, Mimi the Esper. She has not only earned the respect of these children, but also a small gang of adults who consider her their leader after she defeated them. Looker, upon seeing the homeless Emma, takes action and insists she come back to the Looker Bureau to live in exchange for working as his assistant. That summarizes the first part of Emma's story. We'll get to the second half of her story later, but there's already something fishy happening here. First off, Looker admits later that he lied to us. He's not a private investigator for hire. He is actually a secret agent for the international police. Rather than dealing with local happenings, he responds to situations much larger in scope. Street gangs seem far below his jurisdiction, which suggests that something about the street gang situation is bigger than he initially lets on. And it might be related to the work he is doing for the international police. In Pokemon Sun and Moon, the next games in the series, we work with Looker again. This time, he reveals that he is a member of the UB Task Force, a team of agents investigating incidents involving Ultra Beasts, creatures from beyond our dimension who traveled to Alola through wormholes created by the antagonistic members of the Aether Foundation. Looker's main partner in this story is Annabelle, who is a Battle Frontier boss in Pokemon Emerald in the non-Mega timeline. Annabelle is our prime example of a FALLER, a character who strayed into an ultra wormhole, became lost in the rift between dimensions, and wandered until ultimately falling through another wormhole, landing in the Alola region in the Mega timeline. Through this process, she loses her memory, and also becomes imbued with what I call an ultra aura, basically a residue of the void that permeates her being and can attract ultra beasts to her. Annabelle's fall occurred 10 years before the events of Sun and Moon. Since X and Y are set about 3 years before Sun and Moon, this timeline places Looker as a member of the UB Task Force for at least 7 years before the events of X and Y. So it's possible and even likely that whatever was happening in Lumiose City that drew him there was related to Ultra Beasts. So here's the implication of all this. If Looker was in Lumiose for work related to the UB Task Force, and his line of action was to investigate the gang activity in the city, then maybe the gang activity was related to Ultra Beasts. My theory is that at least one reason Looker was in the city was to look for a FALLER. It's implied in Sun and Moon that the international police have some way of detecting the ultra aura of Fallers, which they used to confirm that Annabelle was one. If someone fell into Kalos, the international police could detect their aura, then dispatch Looker to find them, in order to protect not only the Faller, but also the world around them that could become prone to Ultra Beast attacks. That's why Looker investigated the child gangs. His sensors were pointing him toward Emma, but she was protected by the children. He required a strong trainer to clear the way for him, so he contacted the player. But does Emma actually resemble a Faller? We don't know very much of her backstory, but what we do know doesn't rule out the possibility. Annabelle is the prime example of a Faller. She was found washed up on a beach, stripped of her memory, and imbued with Ultra Aura. When we are looking for other Fallers, we are looking for any or all of these symptoms. Emma's backstory prior to the recent events of X and Y are never elaborated, so we don't ever get a scene where she washes up on a beach. But also, she never brings up any of the history of how she became homeless. At one point, she comments on finding father figures in Looker and later Xerosic, characters who give her guidance and materials for survival and success. She says, "Do you think that's what it's like to have a father?" She seems to have no memory of having parents at all. Maybe she became an orphan at a very young age, but maybe, just maybe, her memory of her parents was erased when she became a Faller. She also has no memory of how to read, write, or do math. While all of these could be explained by extreme poverty, they also fit neatly with a case of amnesia. As for Emma being imbued with Ultra Aura, the only evidence pointing at this is Looker's interest in her. But Looker is indeed interested. But Emma's story doesn't end there. Perhaps elements of her prolonged story also point at her being unique. Once Emma moves into the Looker Bureau, she feels a guilt for taking this thing for free. She tells Mimi she wants to find a part-time job to pay rent, so she answers an ad. As it turns out, the job she takes is offered by Xerosic, the top scientist at Lysander Labs, who in the game's main story repaired and fired the ultimate weapon. In the post-game, Xerosic has invented the Expansion Suit, a robotic suit that he is able to control that can hijack the consciousness of the wearer and force them to do his evil deeds. Xerosic's weapon of choice is mind control. In the anime, he also invents mind control devices. One of his ace Pokemon, Malamar, is capable of taking control of people and possibly is the model Xerosic copies for his technology. The job Emma is hired to do is to wear the expansion suit. While she is inside, she believes she is taking a nap, but in reality, Xerosic is controlling her while she acts out crimes. Xerosic refers to the suit and Emma together as Essentia. He puppeteers her to graffiti a piece of art at the Lumiose Museum, and he makes her battle people in alleys of the city, then steal their Pokeballs using a technology he invented for the suit. Ultimately, Looker and the player hunt down the Pokemon thief and discover it is Essentia. Mimi the Esper intervenes, so Looker is able to put together that it is Emma inside the suit. Looker makes some kind of deal with Malva, a member of the Kalos League, and also formerly of Team Flare. She betrays Xerosic, claiming honor among thieves while disparaging his current actions. She shows us the way to the secret floor of Lysander Labs, where Xerosic is operating from. In his office, we find his notes about the capabilities of the expansion suit, as well as his observations of training Emma. Xerosic returns and sics Essentia on us. Eventually, we defeat her, and between Mimi's psychic powers and Xerosic's mercy, Emma is freed from the control of the suit. Looker then seems to make peace with Xerosic, offering him to attend the special dinner he is planning for Emma. So that's a pretty bizarre series of events. Emma stumbles blindly into being used by Xerosic. Was there any way she could have been targeted by him? Let's examine Xerosic's other intentions with the expansion suit. Specifically, it is a tool to steal Pokemon from trainers. In the main story of the game, Lysander sapped the legendary Pokemon's life energy as fuel to fire the ultimate weapon, hoping it would give him eternal life. 3,000 years ago, AZ also fired it, but instead of using the legendary Pokemon, he used the life energy of countless other Pokemon as fuel. So a compelling reason Xerosic could steal strong Pokemon from trainers is to use as new sacrifices to power the ultimate weapon and launch it again, to complete the goals of Team Flare. Before Looker goes to Lysander Labs, he says to Mimi that suit she wears is most likely the doing of that man, the man I have come so far to hunt down. This implies that Looker's job here in Lumiose is to search for Xerosic, but this doesn't align with his earlier actions with the street gangs. They had nothing to do with Xerosic. Looker went after Emma separately. This is evidence that Emma was independently important to Looker's goals in the city. So one of Looker's missions is to apprehend Xerosic for his crimes. But oddly, we end up seeing him give Xerosic mercy. Why wouldn't Looker simply arrest him? The game kind of implies that it's because Looker recognizes that Emma sees Xerosic as a father figure. But maybe there's something more to this. Why would Xerosic hire Emma specifically in the first place? Can it really be a coincidence that he hired the same person that Looker took off the streets? What if Xerosic targeted Emma because he, like Looker, was also able to recognize the ultra aura emanating from her? I could imagine several motivations for Xerosic to target a Faller. The first idea is, by having a person inside the expansion suit who attracted Ultra Beasts, Xerosic could use them to hunt powerful UBs and capture them as great fuel sources for the ultimate weapon, all while he controlled the suit from distant safety. But I have an even wilder second theory. The ultimate weapon uses infinity energy as power, as do Mega Evolutions, Sea Crystals, and the abandoned Sea Mauville project in Hoenn, to name a few. I am not the first to theorize that maybe infinity energy can also be used to open ultra wormholes. My theory is that upon firing the ultimate weapon, Team Flare accidentally opened an ultra wormhole that sent Lysander into another dimension, like a reverse Faller. At the end of X and Y, Lysander is missing. Maybe Xerosic wants to search for him. With another Faller as a model, Xerosic can fine-tune sensors that could help him find his missing boss. As long as we have an ultra wormhole open, this is a perfect opportunity for Emma to fall into Kalos. As Lysander falls into the wormhole, Emma falls out of it. Maybe Xerosic even witnessed Emma's fall and so knew who to track down. This might not even be the first time we've seen Fallers go in opposite directions through the same ultra wormhole at the same time. In Sun and Moon, we learn that prior to Annabelle, Looker and Nanu had another partner on the UB task force. In an encounter with an Ultra Beast, probably a Guzzlord, as suggested by Wix UB data, something happened to their partner. It's possible that she died, but that's never actually stated outright. Some theorists, including Loxton, have pointed out that Guzzlord seems to be analogous to a black hole, devouring everything in its path. And Loxton suggests that Guzzlord's white shiny variant might be meant to resemble a white hole, the opposite of a black hole. A black hole-white hole pair is a theoretical pair of objects where the black hole sucks things in and they are spit back out by the white hole elsewhere. This makes them a transportation medium through space, otherwise called a wormhole. So in this way, Guzzlord embodies a wormhole. And the implication would be that it is a living ultra wormhole. So when it devours things, or people, they would basically be sent into an ultra wormhole. So if Looker's old partner was eaten by a Guzzlord, wouldn't that literally make them a Faller again? Looker is visibly upset and regretful of what happened to his old partner and blames himself. Even Nanu blames him. No wonder this guy is never smiling. He's always plagued by the memory of failing to protect his partner from falling into an ultra wormhole. In X and Y, before Looker goes to hunt for Xerosic at Lysander Labs, he finishes, "If I fail to find and stop him, my Emma might never... I have no choice but to beg the help of that despicable..." Whoa, beg the help of? You would think he would say something like, "I have no choice but to arrest him." Instead, he intends to ask him for help? Even after Emma is safely out of Xerosic's control, Looker doesn't arrest him for his actions. Instead, he says, "I think it's time you and I have a little chat, Dr. Xerosic." Uncuffed, he takes Xerosic back to Looker Bureau. "Once I have everything in order, I will ask you to accompany me to the station." But then he offers him to join them for dinner. The final chapter of the X and Y postgame has a curious subtitle. "Here's looking at you, kid." This is a reference to the classic, fantastic movie Casablanca, which I'm going to offer end spoilers for shortly and recommend you skip to the timestamp to avoid if you haven't seen the movie. This is the part where you skip the spoilers. 3, 2, 1, I don't have a watch. In Casablanca, the two main characters, Rick and Ilsa, meet in Paris in 1940 and fall in love, but Ilsa deserts him when she discovers that her husband, who she thought was killed by the Nazis in World War II, has indeed survived and snuck back to find her. Rick helps them escape the war and survive, even though she tells him she wants to stay with him in Casablanca. Among his final words to her are one of the most famous lines in cinema history. "Here's looking at you, kid." Following her departure, in a twist, a Nazi officer betrays evil and offers to help Rick plot his own escape. In the iconic closing shot of the film, the two walk off into the fog, and Rick says another famous and iconic line, "I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." This ending is obviously echoed in the finale of the X and Y postgame, when Looker and Xerosic, a hero and a defeated villain, depart together. If the Casablanca homage is to be continued, then the two are walking off as new friends. The final title card of the postgame reads, "Our story together ends here, but their story is just beginning." Maybe this is supposed to reference the player character and Emma, to whom Looker has turned over responsibility of keeping Lumiose safe, but I think it is much more interesting if it is actually about Looker and Xerosic. So what would a beautiful friendship between Looker and Xerosic look like? If tracking down Fallers in other dimensions is Xerosic's goal, then that could align perfectly with Looker's own personal motivations. Looker is racked with guilt over his lost partner. Maybe he would take drastic action if he thought he could get redemption by finding her and bringing her to safety. And Xerosic certainly seems capable of using technology to create such a thing. He could bargain with Looker for absolution of his criminal charges, or maybe even a role working directly with the UB task force. If my theory is correct, it could result in some of these things being true in Pokemon Legends ZA. First, Emma works secretly for the international police. She could be monitoring the remains of Team Flare, making sure that they're on the straight and narrow. She could also be watching Quasartico, who I have seen a few theories connecting to Necrozma, who is closely related to the Ultra Beasts. On the box art, Emma is shown battling with a Mega Lucario. Lucario is the Aura Pokemon. Maybe it is able to detect the Ultra Aura coming off of Emma, which drew it to her. It should be noted here that I have coined the term Ultra Aura on my own to summarize the symptoms of Fallers. In the games, Looker describes it, "The UBs relentlessly seek out those who have passed through an Ultra Wormhole. The passage must change them somehow, as though they've been bathed in some energy, something that the beasts can smell or sense. Lucario being able to sense that energy or even draw power from it could be a cool idea. Second, Looker and Xerosic both now work for the International Police as well. Looker is a senior agent, and Xerosic is an engineer. They may or may not appear in the game itself. Xerosic may build technology that Emma uses, and not just the expansion suit, which is notably now upgraded with a slot for a Megastone. Third, Mabel is able to be the new professor as part of the plea deal arrangements between Malva and Looker. Basically, Malva asked for immunity for her close associates at Team Flare in return for the information that led Looker to Xerosic. Malva said, "Tell that partner of yours, tell that infuriating man, yes, tell him I fulfilled my end of the bargain. And he should keep in mind what will happen to him if he doesn't do the same." I would be surprised if we don't see the outcome of this bargain. Fourth, and by extension, I expect the other Team Flare admins to all have similar high-ranking roles at institutions around Kalos. Potentially the same places we saw them in X and Y. That would place Aliana at the power plant, Byrony and Celosia at the Pokeball factory, and the butler Chalmers continuing his work at Hotel Richissime, or even potentially at Hotel Z. Malva herself may reprise her role in the Pokemon League. Fifth, and finally, Lysander will continue being absent, unless Xerosic is successful in finding him. If he does appear, he may now be immortal like AZ, and additionally, he may have symptoms of a faller. Maybe he has amnesia and forgot about his evil plans. This could set him up for a redemption arc. That's my theory. But there are a few pieces of evidence I haven't quite connected to all of this. Mimi the Esper is terrified of adults. What did adults do to Mimi, and presumably Emma, to make her fearful? The art that Xerosic had Essentia graffiti in the museum was a piece titled "The King, the Pokemon, and the Key," which portrays AZ, his Floette, and the key to the ultimate weapon. Why would Xerosic specifically attack this piece of art? And finally, what happened to Looker's Krogunk? Krogunk was Looker's partner Pokemon. My theory, without much evidence, is that maybe Looker and Nanu's lost partner was in fact Krogunk. We've never gotten confirmation of the gender of Looker's Krogunk, but if we learn it was female, that would point toward this. This also begs even more questions, like, can a Pokemon become a faller? Mystery Dungeon intensifies, am I right? If you can tie these bits of evidence into my theory, please post your ideas in the comments. While you're at it, give the video a like, and subscribe for more Pokemon content. And please listen to my music on Bandcamp, and follow our band there. We don't use most social media, so we really encourage you to find us there. I also have a Discord server, and you can find a link to join us there. Thanks so much for watching!